Hello and welcome to the program. It's a Baltic nation well known for being technologically ahead of the curve, and Estonia is living up to that reputation by rolling out a digital vaccination certificate. It takes a few seconds to generate the document on a smartphone after verifying some basic information. Estonia is in the vanguard of countries working with the EU on a digital green certificate. Supporters of the move say it's a key step towards travel freedom. Well, to talk about this and other big issues, I'm very pleased to welcome the Prime Minister of Estonia, Kaja Kallas. Welcome to Talking Europe, and tell us a little bit more about how this vaccine certificate works in your country and how it fits into EU efforts.
Yes, thank you for having me in the show. First of all, the vaccination certificate, it will work as a boarding pass system, basically, that, you have a big trust network, and then your phone shows whether it's green or red, whether you have the vaccination or you don't have it, or you have the antibodies or you don't have them. So it shows you either it's green or red, and you can move. So basically, remember those times when we traveled a lot, and then you had boarding passes and the systems that you used, electronic boarding pass, vaccination certificate will work in the same way. The big question is, of course, how different standards are interoperable with different countries' vaccination certificates.
So do you expect that countries that are using the same system, that there will be no quarantine at all, perhaps even this summer, between, say, your country and another country that is using an equivalent system? You just go in as it was before the pandemic. You don't have to even spend 5 days in a hotel somewhere.
Well, of course, that's a big question right now when we have the vaccine deficit. We don't have enough vaccines for everybody. So is it really right to give, more rights to people who have vaccines? But I also see it as a way of doing things fast. It doesn't mean that we take rights away from the people that don't have the vaccines, but those who have the vaccines or the antibodies just, get some procedures faster than the others.
Yeah. You've touched on the question of fairness. I just want to quote something that you said on April the 7th, and it was quoted in the ERR news network. You said the Estonian state won't force anyone to get vaccinated, but you then go on to say, I cannot rule out that a condition for going to work is getting vaccinated. So are you okay with a two-speed society, essentially?
Well, the question is, of course, what the state does and what the private practices or private enterprises do. What I meant was that, of course, we don't have obligatory vaccinations on the state level. So the state doesn't force anybody to vaccinate if they don't want to. But what we see nowadays that, enterprises compete with each other, and everybody wants to say that come to our restaurant because you don't get the disease here. And so if they can show that, we check people whether they have been vaccinated or not, then, they can also say that my restaurant is clean. And therefore, what we can't rule out is that different or the private sector will take it up eventually so that it's actually a competitive advantage. And we also have to discuss the consequences of that.
Right. But what I'm saying is it sounds like you're not going to try to intervene legally. If the private sector says you have to be vaccinated to come to work, you're not going to specifically defend the freedom of those who don't want to get vaccinated but who still want to come to work.
What I'm saying is that it's a difficult discussion still ahead. And that's why, right now, when we don't have the equal opportunity to get vaccinated for everybody because there is not enough, then it's not the right way to grant people, bigger rights than the others have who don't have vaccine.
Yeah.
So, but definitely have to discuss and figure this out. What kind of rights can be attached?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to resolve, obviously. Let's talk about something else. You are in Narva, which is right on the border with Russia, and I'd like to show us a map of where Narva is in relation to Ivangorod, which is just inside Russia, just a few hundred meters or perhaps a kilometer or two away from where you're sitting right now. Now, numerous high-ranking officials in Estonia have said that your border with Russia is determined by the Treaty of Tartu, and according to that treaty, Ivangorod belongs to Estonia. But right now, Ivangorod is inside the Russian Federation. All this is being seen as either territorial claims against Russia, obviously that's how it's being seen in Moscow, or at least populist talk. Either way, these kinds of comments don't really create the right kind of climate, I would suggest, to resolve this border issue between you and Russia, do they?
Yes, we have signed a border agreement with Russia in 2014, but it's not ratified by both parliaments. We are definitely ready to go on with the ratification, but it should happen simultaneously on both sides, Russia as well as Estonia. It is true that I'm sitting here and just across the river is Ivangorod, is already Russia. Of course, when we entered NATO, then we said clearly that we don't have any territorial claims. It doesn't mean that the peace treaty of Tartu is not in place and not recognized. It is fully recognized and fully in place. But the treaty for the border, what we have signed 2014, just is a technical document showing where the border really lies right now.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying that by bringing up the issue of the Tartu Treaty, it sounds as though to Russian ears, as though you're saying that Ivangorod, for example, is in Estonia historically, and that's not really going to lead to a resolution of this issue.
You have to understand the historical value of Tartu Peace Treaty. It was the first agreement where Russia said, we recognize Estonia as an independent country, and therefore this still stands. And this is very important for my country, that it was the first time when Russia recognized us as an independent state. So that is the value of this treaty, and that's why we bring this up all the time.
Okay. I want to talk to you about something else. I said at the beginning of this interview that that Estonia is known as a technologically advanced nation, but it's also forward-looking when it comes to gender balance in politics. And there aren't many countries one can think of that have a female prime minister and a female president, and of course key positions, foreign ministers, finance ministers who are women as well. I'm just curious, what does that mean to you in practical, everyday terms?
In practical, everyday terms, it means that I have lots of competent women in the government who run their job very well. So this is what it means practically. But also good, competent men.
Is it? I mean, how does it seem compared to when you were starting out in your career? I assume that it was more of a male-dominated environment.
Well, there are very many competent women in Estonia, and it has been, a question why they are not in the positions that they should also be holding. And so I think what is important is that the picture changes, that everybody sees that, okay, those posts are for women as well as men. Women are not, in essence, better politicians than men, and men are not better politicians than women, but we just have different life experiences. And in order to have balanced decisions, we need to have both represented.
Just one final point. Obviously, Estonia has been celebrating the anniversary of its diplomatic relations with France, and your forces are working very closely with French military forces in Mali as part of the Takuba task force. It's been almost a year since that force went into action. What's your assessment of how it's performed?
We have become brothers in arms with French soldiers in Mali, in Sahel. It has, this cooperation has worked very well. The French soldiers are also have been represented in Estonia in NATO forces. So we definitely value this cooperation very much.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being our guest on Talking Europe, Prime Minister Kaja Kallas of Estonia. That's all for part one of the show, but do stay with us as we continue the discussion about relations between Russia and the West with Ben Wallace, the British Defence Secretary. That's coming up in just a few minutes. Don't go away.